On this week's episode, I'm talking with Stephen Schneider all about creating content that converts.
If you think that you're really going to lose a sale because of someone going to a service page and clicking through to a blog, like there's probably bigger fish to fry on your website. It's kind of like a spider web. You just want to make sure that your site is connected when it makes sense to do so. It's just beneficial to have a really strong site structure, and Google and users will appreciate it. SEO is the only way is just flat out wrong. I think that social media is important. I think that personal brand building is important, especially from like a CEO or somebody else who can be that, personable, relatable figurehead for the brand.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Search with Candor podcast. I am your host, Jack Chambers Ward, and if you would do me a huge favour, please like and subscribe down below on YouTube. We've grown to over 1,000 subscribers since 2024. That was a very, very cool thing to see. I think it was November we achieved that. It was an awesome little goal that I had set for myself throughout the year. So thank you so much for supporting us. And like I said, I'd really appreciate it. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions, you have any thoughts, any guests you'd like to see, any questions for my guest this week, which is Stephen Schneider, because I'm joined by Stephen to talk all about content that converts. It's not just creating content that brings traffic to your website. We actually want to make sales, get people interested in your service, your products, get them to sign up for a newsletter, whatever your goal is at the end of the day. I think we can all get into the kind of easy job of bringing traffic to your site, right? I think most of us as SEOs and marketers can bring traffic to our clients' websites and our own websites, but actually getting that traffic and those users to buy something, to complete a goal, to take action on your site is a whole other kettle of fish, and conversion rate optimization is a huge part of that. UX is a huge part of that, and Stephen and I will get into that and a lot of the amazing work that they're doing over at Trio SEO as well. So stay tuned for that conversation with Stephen coming up right after these messages from our sponsors. Hey Anu, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Welcome to Search with Candor, by the way. But I know you from your PPC podcast, right? PPC Chat Roundup, and plenty of other amazing things you're doing. But if the folks don't know about PPC Chat Roundup, what is it about and what do you talk about on the show?
Of course, I'm really happy to talk about that. The PPC Chat Roundup is a podcast that has been going on for several years now. It was very much, for me, was something that I got involved in during our COVID years. You kind of have like a BC, an AD, AC kind of timeline now. And I really wanted to get involved with the community. And there was this fantastic PPC chat community online, first on Twitter, but we now mostly chat on Slack, coming together every week, every Tuesdays, to talk about our issues and how we're facing them. And so, I decided to round that up, for people who didn't catch up with it, who like to listen to a podcast and hear about how other people are, delving into the paid search world. It is very much PPC focused because that's why it's called PPC Chat Roundup. But we do also like talking about crossovers with SEO because we think, PPC is part of search, SEO is part of search. It's very much going to affect each other. So topics that's really is one of the topics that we've gone over as well. But we've also talked about things like ethics in PPC, getting into talking about at conferences, AI, using AI with our content creation, ad copy, all these different kind of things of very much the hands-on issues. And a lot of them are very much the advice that you're getting are from people from all over the world, who are experts in their fields for many years and usually who work with agencies, who are freelancers and people who have their own clients and are experts very much. They live and breathe paid search and they do it every day, and they really are. There's very much a very generous sharing information, and so my podcast is bringing all that fantastic generous sharing of knowledge out to you, to anyone who wants to listen.
Nice. And I hear you've got some pretty big plans for 2025, right?
Yes, I do. So as I touched upon, a lot of the people that are giving their fantastic advice are people who are either working for agencies or their own freelancers. They have their own clients, so they very much live and breathe paid search and digital marketing. and they have clients to report to, or they work within an agency where everybody near them is also doing paid search. So I am planning on actually getting more of doing interviews in this coming year, where I'm going to be talking to in-house paid search folks, people who actually deal with the finance team, people who deal with, the HR team, people who deal with, other teams, like trying to really explain why that they need to put more money behind their paid search activity, their marketing activity. And so, yeah, I really want to get that amazing, that wholesome viewpoint for you guys, for you to see what paid search should look like from an agency point of view, or like a freelancer point of view, compared to an in-house point of view as well. So yeah, we've got 12 speakers already lined up. It's going to be like monthly interviews that I'll be doing, and I'll be bringing that over to you guys.
Amazing, amazing. And where can people check out PPC Chat Roundup and all the amazing stuff you're doing with PPC Chat, PPC Live, all the cool things you're doing?
Of course. I mean, it's in terms of this landing page, it's under my personal brand, The Marketing Anu. So if you go to themarketinganu.com/podcast, that's where all the episodes live. But we also are on Spotify, on Apple, and yeah, anywhere that you can, listen to podcasts, even on Amazon, music. We spotted it there as well. So yeah, anywhere that you can listen to a podcast, you can find me on. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter as well, where I do a post about when every new episode comes out. So if you follow me on The Marketing Anu as well, on whether it's even like Twitter, but also even like Blue Sky, and on LinkedIn and all the other places, you'll be able to find me talking about all the new episodes that are going to be coming out this year.
Amazing. Brilliant.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for joining me, Annie. My guest this week has worked in SEO for almost 10 years and first began building websites while studying finance in college. Yes, he started building websites in college. Since then, he has co-owned a portfolio of over 40 blogs, managed 400 articles every month, and scaled to 7 figures just using SEO. He is the co-founder and CEO of Trio SEO, a blog writing agency that helps B2B brands drive high-intent organic traffic. Welcome to the show, Stephen Schneider.
Thanks, Jack. Excited to be here.
You too. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it. And it's a topic that I think a lot of the listeners and viewers are going to be interested in, because we talk about content structure a lot. We talk about different types of content, how to create content, all that kind of stuff. And a topic that you brought to me to discuss on the podcast is something where I think a lot of people go wrong in creating content that actually converts. And this can be a game changer when it comes to having conversations with clients, from my experience, and I assume very much from your experience and the team over at Trio SEO as well. So to kind of kick things off, I guess, where do you think most people go wrong when it comes to creating content that doesn't convert? And then we'll kind of get into what we can do to make our content convert a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that the biggest thing that people tend to overlook is the psychology aspect of what the topic or the intent is behind said topic. So at Trio SEO, we specialize in blogging specifically. And so when it comes to blogging, I mean, anyone who knows you can write a topic about literally anything. But if the intent behind that topic doesn't resonate with some sort of buying intent or is close to purchasing, it doesn't make sense. And so kind of being entrepreneurs first, my partners and I, we know how important that is. And so I think that if you just kind of take more of a bottom of funnel approach when choosing the topics and making sure the topics have that, intent to go forward with a booked call or something to get a download, a lead magnet, whatever that might be, you dramatically increase your chances of success compared to just like a normal what is topic or how to topic that I think most blogs cover, but it's kind of a waste of resources in my opinion.
For sure. I think, like you said, there's that kind of wrong approach where people will just kind of create content for content's sake, or feel like it's the right SEO thing to do if they've been advised by particular agencies or freelancers, or read it in the news or whatever it is. And I think you're totally right with that approach and the initial strategy going into it, where you need to think about how it's relevant to the site, how it's relevant to the client site, or if you're working in-house, to your site specifically. And especially when it comes to that element of driving the traffic to the right places, right? For me, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we mostly agree on this. Internal links are hugely important when it comes to this
Oh
kind
yeah. Yeah, I mean, any site that doesn't have internal links is just leaving money on the table, whether it's going to be from their potential growth or um, just kind of like low hanging fruit basics. Google loves it. I mean, that's kind of where a lot of the smaller sites can have an advantage. I would say, that's kind of like where we saw a lot of our quick wins back in college was that we had really, really good internal linking. And we weren't building links or going after those like high quality, super expensive links back in the day. So if you can offset it to some degree, obviously it depends sort of mentality like everything in SEO, but I think you can get pretty far. It's kind of an 80-20 principle with internal linking and how you can kind of like get your site to the next level and then obviously grow from there.
Yeah, I know I've spoken to clients before who have been hesitant to include internal links in case like, oh, they're leaving their
Really?
content, or the opposite side of it where they include maybe a bit too many and it's a bit
Yeah.
overwhelming. Is there kind of that from your perspective when you're creating content? Is there that kind of sweet spot when it comes to pushing people towards the more commercial pages compared to linking to other informational side of things, connecting other blog posts to each other and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, so we always recommend our writers to include anywhere from like 3 to 5 internal links. And I always think that I mean, obviously there's a lot of unknowns and nuances, but internal links are not for readers or users. I think it's easy for us to say that they are because it could direct you to the second related article and all that sort of stuff. But I think just SEO at its core, internal links are for SEO and Google. They're not always going to be. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Um, but I think when it comes to choosing which pages to connect, I always stick to the hub and spoke model or like the silo approach and making sure that, if I'm writing my blog about B2B SEO, like on Trio, and we have 10 B2B SEO topics of different varieties, well, then we usually have one core service page tying back to like B2B SEO services. So every single blog within that kind of group of 8 or 9 blogs about B2B XYZ should point back to the services page. And then in that services page, it should have some sort of like multi-prong effect going back to all those blogs. So I think just kind of making sure that, from like a mental visual perspective, it's kind of like a spider web. You just want to make sure that your site is connected when it makes sense to do so, but also like you said, not adding links just for the sake of thinking that you're doing it correctly, adding links. It's like, yeah, it's a diminishing returns definitely beyond a certain point.
Yeah, I know a lot of SEOs are hesitant to do exactly as you just said, the other way around of linking from commercial pages to informational pages. Again, kind of like you're almost pushing the user away from, or pushing the crawler away from those commercial pages. For me, I totally agree with you. I think they kind of need to be that interconnected web to show that kind of cluster of content, right? To prove that, oh, we're talking about this particular thing. Here is all 10 articles, all 10 product pages. Each 10 of them are connected through to a hub page, all connecting to each other and appropriately linking to each other. For me, that demonstrates you know what you're talking about as a reader. And I think search engines and crawlers feel the same way when they can see that you've got multiple pages talking about similar topics, and the fact that they're all connected is beneficial for both readers and crawlers, right?
Yeah, and I think that, this is kind of something I try to communicate with clients where the way I look at it too is that if you have, a pretty solid landing page or service page, whatever you want to call it, and then at the very, very bottom, say like directly above the footer, wherever that page ends, so to speak, if you have, a small carousel or, a list of the blogs and that points back, if you think that you're really going to lose a sale because of someone going to a service page and then clicking through to a blog, like there's probably bigger fish to fry on your website or your landing page.
We've
Like
got bigger problems.
that's yeah, that's not going to move the needle in the decision making. And if anything, it probably would help reinforce people's decision because if they're actually taking the time to go service page to blog, like they're pretty built into your brand or your website or your offer at some point, and they're probably just doing more due diligence. So I don't know. I think that a lot of SEOs can probably say the opposite, but I think that you and I kind of are on the same page that it's just beneficial to have a really strong site structure, and Google and users will appreciate it, hopefully.
Funnily enough, I was on the other end of this. I was a guest on the Rankable podcast with Garrett Sussman from iPoorRank, and I remember saying, "Oh, and we link our commercial pages to our informational pages," and he was like, "Phew, bold move, man! Like, you sure you want to do that? You want to push customers away from purchasing stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think our content is good enough that, like you said, it will eventually link back. It will pull back around, and the content speaks for itself that it is
Yeah,
actually informational." This is an example from a pretty YMYL, a medical client of ours as well. So it's
yeah,
pretty high level, pretty technical stuff that they're talking about. And it is important to get that stuff right and prove that you are an expert and you know what you're talking about, and you can show to the reader and crawlers that you actually are, an authority in this subject and in this topic. And for me, when it comes to creating that kind of content, you've got to cover all your bases, right? I know you mentioned that bottom of the funnel stuff. We talk about that a lot here at Canda, especially tying into our tool called Also Asked, where you get those zero volume keywords that are super, super specific and really kind of like closely match a lot of search intent. Is that a part of the strategy you're going and thinking about those kind of search intents when it comes to those specific searches that people are going to look for rather than a super generic kind of big volume term, right?
yeah. It's definitely a little bit of both. I would say, like, depending on the topic or whatever, like it's pretty standard that we'll always have FAQs, regardless of whatever page it is.
Mm,
If it's a service page, the FAQs are usually a little bit of a point of direction toward the blogs. So that just kind of makes sense from like a H2, H3 perspective, from an internal linking perspective, like just kind of fundamentals point of view. And then from like a blog point of view, it's a kind of user experience, relevance, and just kind of like trying to figure out how to creatively add in more keywords without making it seem stuffed and making it seem like it's just overwhelmed. Obviously, I don't think it's worthwhile to add like 50 FAQs, but if there's 5 or 6 good ones that really drive it home or offer an internal linking benefit within that cluster of content, then by all means, yeah. Um, but yeah, kind of to your point about like also the zero volume keywords, like I think that like that's kind of a slept on strategy as well. I think that if we can try to find those keywords where people are talking about it, whether it's, and people also ask or Reddit or however you find that, it's a great strategy because even though there's no search volume, definitely discussions are happening around that sort of stuff.
100%. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think we're seeing a lot of people move towards. I mean, you're spot on about forums and Reddit and Quora and all that kind of stuff as well. There's such an untapped mine of, of so much content
Yeah,
and questions and complaints and all this kind of stuff that you could be addressing. And my general sort of rule has always been, if somebody's asking a question about it and somebody is asking a question about your product or your service, you should probably have an answer for it on your website. And
yeah.
that served me pretty well so far in my experience, and a lot of e-commerce sites and things like that. Is that the similar kind of approach when you're driving that? We use the term high intent traffic earlier, right? Thinking about that, bringing people to a site, whether it's to purchase something or to sign up for something or try a new service or whatever it is. How do you differentiate that from just the, one of a phrase, the lower value, the lower intent kind of traffic?
Yeah, I mean, we just spend a lot of time putting ourselves into the future reader's point of view and trying to embody that to the best we can. Whenever we can do that and take it so far, what we do next is we bring our strategy to our clients, and it's a pretty collaborative process because no one knows the business better than they do, and we are just kind of like the SEO nerds in the back end trying to collect this data and do everything to the best of our abilities. But we could choose a topic and say, here's what we think is the best strategy for your next 90-day sprint. These are the 5 topics per month that we want to go after. And they're like, ooh, but what about those ones over there that you kind of have off the side? I'm like, well, we should like think that's the best. But like, yeah, but those are like, that's where we really want to target. I'm like, awesome. Like, let's do that instead. So, there's just so many nuances to business and strategy, and especially with like how people um, clients specifically will have information that they maybe forget to tell us during the planning phase, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't think about this. Like, this is going to be a Q3 topic for us. Like, let's write it now." And it's like, perfect. Like, that's easy. So, yeah, I think just making sure that everyone's on the same page and kind of going through the same senses, just kind of like pays dividends down the road.
Definitely. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a client the other day, and it was that, oh, here is our, like you said, our strategy for the next quarter, for the next 90 days. And we were looking at the kind of options we want to do for their content. They said, oh, actually, we've got a new product range that is launching in February. So if we could tie that into that, I'm like, yes, absolutely, we should be tying that into that. That is perfect.
Yeah,
Give me that information. That is, like you said, that is the gold that I think a lot of clients might take for granted, or like, oh, we
yeah,
discussed it in an internal meeting. We forgot about it by now. But actually, that stuff and aligning stuff with your clients' KPIs and their goals and their objectives can make such a huge difference when you can get a push from multiple channels across the board, right?
yeah. And I think it just also, makes them feel more bought in to that process
Mm.
as well. I think that from like a client relationship standpoint, aside from just like strategy, KPIs, and ROI, and like kind of all the core basics from that front, people want to feel like they are a part of the process, and people want to feel like they're winning together. I think that what we have seen coming outside the agency world and then now building an agency is that some of our referrals are coming to us because they're like, hey, my last agency did XYZ and I hated it. Like, what's your guys' process? And we're like, well, we don't do that. And that's good to know. So like every single time that we develop those sort of relationships, it is kind of like a catalyst for solidifying that and moving forward. So I think just like treating clients, not like their clients, but more partners in the process, um, will definitely like just kind of strengthen that entire relationship moving forward.
That's such a great way of putting it. Yeah, thinking about them as partners, not as clients. And I think that comes a lot with that, like you said, building that long-term relationship, right? When it comes to making a client feel included in that process. I have seen it before. Take an example you just said there of like, oh, we've got this product range coming out in February. It's like, well, sorry, tough. We've already planned out January
Yeah,
to March. So we'll have to do that later. It's like, well, it'll already be gone or sold out or out of season
yeah,
by the time you get around to it in April through to June. So what do we do now? It's like, sorry, tough. Like we're being completely inflexible and all that kind of stuff just blows my mind when I've heard that
yeah.
from agencies in the past.
Yeah, or even like if someone comes to us and they like have a one-off idea or something, and it's like that article doesn't cost that much for us to make, and we can have it, as one extra edition as a freebie or whatever, and just like that goes a long way, I think, in trying to just build that rapport and like kind of just making sure that you're kind of always on a good term working basis. Just building that goodwill. It's like if they come to you and they're like, "Hey, can we completely alter the strategy?" Like, sure, I'm probably not going to say yes or be as happy about that. But if you're like, "Hey, can we do one extra topic about this and make sure that like it's one of the best ones yet?" It's like, sure, like let me talk to the team and see if we can work it in the next 30 days. Like it doesn't have to be an overnight delivery, but like just making them feel like it's like, yeah, we can work this into the queue. I'll update you when we're further along and like see how we can make this come to life. And they're like, cool, sweet. It's like make it a win-win for everyone.
Exactly, exactly. I hope a lot of the listeners and viewers are kind of nodding along with me as we're talking here, because I think there's a lot of that. Like you said, I'm sure we've all seen it. You and I have definitely seen it, Stephen, when it comes to that bad practices from clients coming and saying, as you just said, "Oh God, I've had a terrible experience with this agency," or "Oh, this person really screwed me over. Can you help? Please don't do the same thing to me." That kind of stuff. We have seen that many times here at Canada, and I've seen it many times in my previous agencies as well, where
Yeah.
you see that kind of there's a lot of content created and nothing's happening, no money's being generated, no clicks are being driven, anything like that. From your experience, what's that kind of process like if you're looking at a site that, for want of a better phrase, has been badly done and the content is just kind of there for the content's sake? What is your process to take that existing bad content, again, for want of a better phrase, and turn it into something that will actually convert? Is it a start from scratch kind of thing where you typically edit, or are you about to say the dreaded "it depends" once again?
I won't only because you said that. But no, I think the biggest thing is just setting expectations from the start. And when you have a person come through and they're like, "Hey, this is what happened. I have, 50 to 100 articles on my site, and all of them are random articles. The URLs of like trash, like the content is unorganized. There's no headings, like pretty much an SEO's worst nightmare from a content perspective. And you just have this kind of, be realistic and like, hey, you know, this is going to be a little bit more of a denser strategy for us. Like, we're going to do our best to get this, but we're probably going to go through a mixture of new content, updates, rewrites, and redirects, and trying to consolidate some of the content. Because if we just leave it as is, like, we're not really setting ourselves up for success. And I think what we've seen is that the more you can just explain it at like a 5-year-old level or a 7th grade level, like SEO is one of those topics where people just immediately glaze over when you mention anything, like even redirects, or like, I don't know what that is. I don't care to learn. But if you're just like, hey, you have 4 articles that are all talking about the same thing, we want to make one master, like one mega guide. They're like, that sounds great. Like, let's do that. And you're like, perfect. Like, I'm not even going to tell you what the technical process is, but like, this is what's going to happen. So I think that just keeping like realistic expectations throughout, keeping them informed, and also just like trying to get ahead of feedback and, trying to get ahead of anything that you're foreseeing. If you don't communicate for 30 days and you're like, oh yeah, I was just about to email you, like this audit's almost done. And they're like, that could have been a bi-weekly email where you're just like, hey, we're making great progress on this. Can't wait to share it with you in the next 2 weeks. Like, cool, sweet, like talk to you then. So I think just making sure like realizing that they're human and they probably want to be looped in, like they're paying you a decent amount of money for this service. And like I would also feel some sort of way if I wasn't looped in. So yeah, there's lots. That's a kind of long-winded answer, but I did my best not to say it depends.
I appreciate the effort, mate. I appreciate the effort. I know, I said I've seen that before as well when it comes to that kind of bad client. This is a whole other topic, obviously, with client relationships, but I think it does tie in. You're absolutely right. Where I've seen just like, oh, we haven't spoken to our agency in 3 months, or we just get
Oh,
one email every 6 weeks and that's it. We've never seen their faces, we've never heard their voices, all that kind of stuff. It blows my mind how much I'm trying to think of a way to be nice about these people, but I don't care anymore. How much people are willing to take without giving anything back, right? And just like you said,
yeah.
take a pretty decent amount of money when it comes to most content plans and content strategies from an agency side, and then give nothing back in terms of like, oh yeah, here's some, God forbid, chat GPT or Gemini generated
Yeah.
crap or whatever it is, which we're seeing more and more of these days, unfortunately. As I'm gonna, again, the other dreaded phrase of LLMs and AI, I'm gonna have to break glass right now. There's definitely the rise of people just churning stuff out and taking people's money and things like that. But I think we're also, hopefully, as an industry, moving in a more positive direction where we're more aware of how to use these tools appropriately, use, keyword research tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs and all that kind of stuff, as well as more specialized stuff, combining that with the AI and LLMs that are now so prevalent as well. Has that shifted your process when it comes to integrating more of those tools and bringing that into part of the content creation kind of strategy?
Yeah, here and there. We're still pretty hesitant to, we have AI tech stacks and tools, I think just like everyone else, but we don't write AI content. Everything's human written, human edited. We're pretty strict about that sort of stuff with writers. Where we really leverage those sort of tools are like creating brand briefs for our writers, making sure that they're structured in such a way that allows the writers to fully understand the brand, the ICP, the CTAs, like the main points of the tone, like all of that sort of stuff so they can be successful. And then any other notes that clients give us, where they're like, send us, a 20-page marketing document. And we're like, no one's reading this. Like, your internal team didn't even read this. Like, we're just gonna, like, we need a summary at some point. So I think using it from that point of view is great. I also use ChatGPT a lot for just like trying to consolidate data to Google Sheets. I think it's like kind of an overslept on strategy where I just can just like take a screenshot and be like, hey, I needed to figure out how to do this. And I'm like, oh, you use this crazy formula with like 50 apostrophes and 60 commas. And like, here it is. I'm like, sweet. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely it kind of depends on what we're working on at that given time, but always looking for new tools, always looking for ways to kind of like, save time without essentially diminishing quality or cutting corners. Well,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to that time saving element, especially when it comes to data. For me, like
yeah,
data analysis and summarizing things is where LLMs have really shone and saved me the most time. When you can think about how quickly it can summarize, like you said, an entire article or a brand guideline or this super dense piece of information, you just want the key highlights to get some ideas or to get a quick idea of what's going on. That can be so useful because it's a language model. I know we use AI a lot, but it's a large language model. It understands the words and the phrases and the language that's used, not in a way that it can go and do keyword research for you.
right.
That's not how it works, listeners and viewers. Be very careful with that. But
What are you talking about?
summarizing
That's how we
stuff,
do all of
it's
our
it
good research. Yeah, right.
yeah.
Just say, give me a hub and spoke approach for insert niche, and that's done. I'm
I I
joking,
hate
listening.
how I hate how right you are there, Stephen. I hate how
Uh,
right you are with I've seen those kind of prompts shared on LinkedIn and X and Blue Sky and all that kind of stuff, and a little piece of my SEO soul dies every time, it feels like.
so true though. It's brutal.
Yeah, you mentioned CTAs just now as well. I know that's I want to say a hotly debated topic, but definitely a debated topic when it comes to creating SEO content. How much do they factor into? We talked about internal links, obviously the importance of internal links. Are you thinking of the actual structure and where you're placing those links in terms of how far down into the page? Where are those CTAs sitting? Are they breaking up the text? Are they in the images? Are they a separate thing? Is there a CTA right at the top, right at the bottom? Where's the kind of plan? What's the kind of strategy you go in with thinking about the actual format of that content when it comes to those CTAs and the blog content as well?
Yeah, so we kind of pre-curate 2 to 3 CTAs per client, and that's something depending on either the content hub that we're working on or the type of content or XYZ, something more specific. So it's not just like a random CTA place. And then we also give writers the creative flexibility to adjust that sentence to fit and flow into the content. It should just be a copy and paste insert. And then also we connect with the client to make sure that the link within that CTA is the obviously going to the right place, and then we can track that in analytics. So it just really that's kind of step number one. And then in order to figure out where to place that, we always go kind of like after the introduction, above the first H2, but not like it's still semi within that first fold area. And then obviously the conclusion, but how many people are actually making it to the conclusion of a blog anymore? So I kind
I've
of like
seen
get that
plenty of kind of contact forms right at the bottom. You're like, who is scrolling this far down and filling out this contact form? Let's be honest.
brutal. So yeah, like introduction and then somewhere around that like 30, 40, 50% mark, depending on the length of the article. So, and then the other kind of CTAs that we've are sort of testing not only on our own site, but also on some client site is like if you have obviously the traditional sidebar widget, which gets pushed on mobile, but if you are on site, desktop, it should be there. And then in our own blog, we have one directly above the start of the blog before the title and then one directly below at the very bottom, just to kind of like capture any like mega users who fully scroll to the bottom, and then people who jump in and they don't care and they just see the offer and they're like, "This is good to go." So we're always kind of switching things up and seeing, and then we do want to start testing images and kind of getting that, but it's a little more challenging based on the variety of clients and the branding that has to go into that per image and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of one of our goals for this year to figure out a way to really master that for clients. But if clients have images and like, hey, here's a banner, use it however you see fit, like perfect. We'll just throw that into a blog. So
Yeah, as soon as you get images involved, you then have to have a discussion with the branding team, and then that
yeah,
might have to go through to the C-suite people. It's like, well, no, you can't confirm and definitely use that shade of blue unless it's confirmed by the CEO. It's like, okay, fine. And then exactly as you're saying there, when you come around to actually adding it into your article, then that doesn't quite work against this, or it doesn't quite work with this CMS that this website has, but it worked on another CMS that we had with another client. You really do have to kind of adapt it around. And about that, I think you're spot on there when it comes to trying to capture that initial interest, capturing a slightly more invested reader, like you said, 30, 40, 50% in, and then right at the bottom, just in case there's
Yeah.
anybody scrolling all the way to the bottom, covering all the bases there without feeling exactly as you said about keyword stuffing, right? The old adage of definitely do not go mad on your keywords and stuff. I feel like we all know that at this point. We've all been doing SEO long enough that we didn't know not to keyword stuff. But I definitely still see people, as I mentioned, stuffing internal links or stuffing
Yeah.
CTAs where every single paragraph is broken by a banner. I was like, this is mad. And I was just trying to scroll and I accidentally clicked on one. I was like, I'm done. I've had enough. I'm never using this website again. It was like
Oh,
anti-brand building where I was just completely put off from reading their articles
it's
ever
true
again.
though. I mean, I think that that's like really a strong point to drive home, and especially with how important EAT is nowadays, regardless of whether like it's the ranking criteria, like it still is a content guideline for how people should be viewing and thinking about content. It's like the basics are there. Like, does the user experience suck? Like, yeah, if you're on that page and you're like, I'm not even trying to buy anything. Like, stop selling to me. Or like, this topic is so far related from my purchase intent. Like, don't include, you know, a dozen CTAs on some top of funnel piece of content. So I think just kind of keeping that in mind from the reader's point of view, like, will really go a long ways at scale.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of news sites have been very guilty of adding far too many like sidebar ads, or worst of all, the video ad that drops down after you start
Oh,
scrolling. Oh god,
true.
like just with some weird CLS lazy loading stuff that's just popping in afterwards. Like I was trying to click something else and now I've clicked play on your video and it's playing with sound into my earbuds and I want to again, I never want to visit this website ever again. You have put me off your brand forever.
Oh yeah. It's you'd think that people would catch on, but I mean like when especially with some sites when they're strictly making money through ads, it's like they have that's their sole purpose to survive. Like they have a drive to do that. And it's like it just totally distorts the user experience, which is horrible. But yeah, we also include a lot of CTAs to like lead magnets or newsletters, like when it makes sense. Because I think that that's where a lot of the slept on ROI comes from is getting people built into the ecosystem, getting them into a lead magnet, like getting something that allows them to find value in the brand and then go from there. It's not an overnight buy when people land on your blog. Like they want to be able to learn more about you, figure out the offer, like think on it. Like it's never going to be a click, sign up, purchase path. And I think that that's kind of something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, I feel like we're quite a few years past the traditional top, middle, bottom of funnel, super simple customer journey, right? Especially when we've got
Yeah.
so many different devices, so many different places to interact with brands, whether that's social stuff, YouTube ads, podcast ads, since we're doing a podcast as well. There's so many different ways, and I know there's the old stat, and I don't think this is true anymore, where like, oh, a typical customer sees the brand 9 times before actually purchasing anything. I don't think that number actually holds up to any sort of scrutiny or study or anything like that. I don't think there's much data to back it up, but I get the gist of it, right? You get the
Yeah.
idea of, oh yeah, like you said, you can subscribe to a newsletter and then also read an article and then see like, oh, Stephen from Trio, I saw him on this thing and I read his newsletter. Oh, he's on the Search with Canada podcast. Oh, he's on this other podcast. Oh, cool. You're popping up all over the place. You're building that brand. You're building, for one of a better phrase, getting your face out there, getting your voice, getting your brand out there. And when
Yep.
that comes to stuff like newsletters, I totally agree. That's where, again, I think a lot of people just try like push them towards the products, push them towards the service pages, when actually capturing something where it can be a long-term relationship. And granted, that brings into the whole question of attribution and ROI and all that kind of stuff. It's much harder to track that longer, more
Yeah.
wobbly lead process than a nice little funnel, but tough. That's the nature of the internet these days, I feel like.
Very much so. Yeah, I know. There's always the hot debate between like the SEO driving the first click or driving the last click. And it's like, we'll never really know, huh? So
Or you just go with GA4's AI powered, blended, weighted model thing that they do now that they refuse to explain apart from some very weird formulas and maths. And it's like, okay. Um, so how does that work? 'Cause, well, we're going to kind of distribute the attribution across. Like, but you're not. necessarily equally contributing to each channel. So that doesn't quite.
I can't wait
I'm
for
still
all
confused
of
by the blended
the
model.
I hope that Google just drops as many GA4 updates as quickly as possible because I just love GA4. Said no one ever.
I think I know 3 people that like GA4, and 2 of them are, like, analytics specific people professionally, so you have to be, like, next level nerd to really get into GA4.
I it's just one of those things where I just know that I'm like up against the wall and I'm like, Google, you make the rules and I guess we'll play in your sandbox. And that's just how it is. So
Exactly, exactly. I know it's something I've talked about on the show before, and definitely something I think a lot of people have been talking about when it comes to even outside of just kind of the text articles, the blog articles, right? How much does a multimedia approach, for want of a better phrase, we talked about, being on a podcast and then having a newsletter and then, I don't know, billboards and bus ads and all this kind of stuff. How much of that in terms of video content, audio content, text articles, all that kind of stuff, do you think that is something more brands budgets in mind and all that kind of blah blah blah, it depends, etc., etc.? I said it for you, don't worry. With budgets in mind, how important do you think that is when it comes to the shift in the way people are searching these days?
oh yeah, massively important. I think that, saying that SEO is the only way is just flat out wrong. Like I think that social media is important. I think that personal brand building is important, especially from like a CEO or somebody else who can be that, personable, relatable figurehead for the brand, whether it's just like a go-to influencer and they're just known for that. Like one of my kind of off topic, but one of my favorite things is that I don't know if you know like David Dobrik, kind of a YouTuber influencer
Yep.
person, but he's known for like giving people cars, and SeatGeek is like known for being like the car sponsor that always gives people cars. And just through SeatGeek, kind of like investing in David Dobrik that entire period, like their business grew so much. And he is like, it's just two completely different things. But like the fact that that worked together, like that helped both people kind of grow. And so I think that from that perspective, or like that kind of mindset, you have to explore all different kind of mediums to figure out like what works for your brand and then double down when it makes sense to do so.
Yeah, I've seen a real brilliant approach when it comes to I'll start with the opposite. Like the bad way of doing it, in my opinion, you just like embed a YouTube video at the bottom of your blog post and ta-da, multimedia marketing approach. We've covered all of our bases. But actually, like you said, pairing up with existing creators, or if you have someone on your team that can be that face, that voice, that element who is doing the Instagram reels, the YouTube videos, the TikTok shorts, the all the other stuff, or as you said, pairing with an influencer that is relevant to your niche and your industry can be absolutely game changing. And I know we've seen entire companies built off the fact that a handful of videos went viral on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. And like you said, pairing with somebody like Dave Dobrik can be a huge element to growing your brand. Then
Yeah.
it comes to where do we go from there? That's a whole other discussion, and the plan after that to continue that growth or stabilize yourself at least. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of people still do underestimate how influencer marketing can be tied into your overall content strategy. Because again, this was basically the theme of 2024 for the entire podcast was stop thinking about SEO in a silo and think about everything else that's going on around you, right?
Yeah, I mean, even from like our perspective, the true SEO, like the website, we started it pretty much day one, which is like just coming up on a year, over a year now. And like that is a strategy in itself. But then each of the partners, like me and Connor Gillivan and Nathan Hirsch, each have our own personal brand strategy and like a growing, influence on LinkedIn. And just knowing that there's that trust built in when people see us or they engage with our content. And then, networking at its core, I think is so overlooked nowadays because people think it's like this boring, dead, kind of like old school tactic for business. When really it's like, I didn't even know about this until I met Nate Connor and we started working together and talking more. And I was just like, holy crap, like these guys are like networking machines. And they, built and scaled and exited their last company. And when we started Trio, they're like, oh, we already have like a handful of beta clients that are ready to go. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, oh yeah, just don't worry about that. Like, let's just build the systems. Like, okay, like that's great. So, uh, but that's the power of people who trust you and know you through your expertise and the quality that you produce. It's like you kind of already have this built-in Rolodex of clients who are at least willing to see if there's something there, and then go and kind of continue the conversation.
Yeah, I've literally seen people get clients from appearing on podcasts. Like, "Oh, I saw you on
Yeah,
this podcast and I'd like to work with you. I loved your talk at this conference about this thing." When it comes to that, like you said, that element of it, I think you're totally right. A lot of people see it as the old school, old fashioned kind of stuff. But right as you said at the very beginning of the show, it all comes down to that psychology and the kind of foundation of marketing as it has been for hundreds of years, basically.
yeah.
As much as we're like, yeah, we don't do newspaper ads or billboard ads or bus stop ads or whatever it is, the same rules still kind of apply. Obviously, you can't track the conversion rate of a billboard ad or a bus stop ad in the same way that you can for a Facebook or a
No,
Google or a
just
YouTube or
wait. There'll
whatever.
be a GA. There'll be a GA4 for billboards soon. I have a feeling.
Add a channel for billboards and buses, just like, yeah, there we go. Custom report on GA4. I would love to see that. I'd be fascinated to see like impressions to actual purchase conversion rate. It must be in the 0.00001% kind of range. But
Oh, I
again,
love it.
like we said, it's getting your face out there, right? And when
Mhm.
it comes to converting, I think you're spot on when it comes to that blog content, when it comes to the stuff you're creating on your own website or on your client's website, that's where you're really going to get the sales done, where you're actually driving the traffic to actually purchase something compared
Yeah,
to stuff that is more, again, to use the old fashioned outdated thing, the top of funnel awareness kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
And for me, I think a lot of people kind of focus on a top or a bottom or one or the other, or maybe a bit of both. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the middle there. And I think a lot of people underestimate, which is exactly the kind of stuff we're talking about when it comes to informational content that can also link towards transactional stuff, can push people
yeah,
towards those product pages, towards those lead magnets like newsletters, like sign up sheets, like communities and Slack groups and all this kind of stuff that I think we're seeing growing a lot, especially in the SEO industry. A lot of different communities are cropping up now. There's a brilliant power in kind of the old school network community kind of side of things. And I don't know about you, Stephen, but I feel like quite loyal to certain brands in certain way. Once I'm kind of invested, I get really invested. And if they line up with my values and they can continue to produce content and products and stuff like that that I believe in, then I will be a long-term loyal fan. That might just be me. I know I tend to be loyal to a fault sometimes, but I think it's definitely something people want brands to be authentic and to believe in them and stuff like that, right? Rather than just a generic, please buy my
yeah.
stuff. Here you go.
I mean, yeah, totally. I'm the same way too. I think that it kind of comes back to like basic, like kind of a common theme of this discussion, which is like human psychology. It's people don't like change. They like the path of least resistance. If I can go and order something, like when I go buy shoes, like I'm looking at new running shoes, I will probably go buy the same exact shoes that are worn down because they did the job perfectly. I'm not going to have to research and like put myself out there and curious. Like, no, I just want the same thing. I don't want to think about it. And I think that's how it is for a lot of brands and a lot of people who are trying to go that. It's like, no, minimal effort. I want it overnight. Get it to me in a couple hours, Amazon, and everyone's happy. And I think that that's kind of just like the kind of the community and world that we turn into. But for brands who are on the other side of that discussion, if you can consistently deliver and not jeopardize the product, jeopardize the client or customer relationship and how that is interfered with the product. It's like, hey, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just do your thing longer than your competitors and everything's gonna be fine. And that's kind of like the mantra of SEO also.
Yeah, definitely. As we always say, I think, again, most of the viewers and listeners will probably know this. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? It's that
Yeah.
long-term investment. It's the driving consistency, all that kind of stuff when it comes to creating content, no matter what platform you're doing it. I think that matters now more than ever when it comes to being authentic, understanding your brand values or your client's brand values. As we mentioned earlier, like getting to know your client well can be the difference maker in actually creating stuff that works for them and their brand, and stuff that just feels kind of put together and copied and pasted,
Yeah,
where you can actually get something that aligns with not only the brand values but the reader values and what they want to see and their search intent. That's where the magic happens, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of people move towards that kind of content. And I think, like you said, people want the path of least resistance. Give that to them as much as you possibly can. If you're talking about a product or a service, link to that product or service. So many times we talked about internal links earlier, and it's one of my favorite topics and the thing I talk about with clients all the time is that, well, you've just mentioned this product, why didn't you link to it? Or you've just talked about this other thing, this other element, this other product or service that you offer. Link to it. Link to it from another product page. Link to it from the category page. Link to it from your blog content. Anything and everything without going too crazy. Like I said, there's a sweet spot. You should be interconnecting these and linking to it and giving people an easy conversion path so they can actually buy stuff. I actually saw a really interesting example of this the other day. I was doing competitor research for the client I mentioned earlier, and I think it was, I want to say it was the medical stuff again. They actually had add to cart buttons in the CTAs where the products were linked on the blog article. And I was like, that is pretty clever. That is pretty slick, where you can just add, oh, I'm interested in this product. I'm reading about it. I'm still interested. And you don't even need to click away, go to a product page, then add to cart, then come back and then find more. You can just start building your cart as you're scrolling through this article. And I was like really genuinely impressed by that. I was like, that seems so obvious and so simple. You're making that path so straightforward, and it's
yeah,
essentially less than fewer clicks than is possible. That was a really,
yeah.
really clever idea.
Yeah, that brings me back to like my affiliate days where like I don't know that if I ever had a different path and still knew what I knew today, I would just immediately learn CRO in addition to learning SEO from a decade ago. And I just like I don't know the whole customer psychology and like user experience intent conversation around that sort of stuff and like optimizing for like little stuff like that. It's just like that is where I especially nerd out. It's just so cool and fascinating to me.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, I think those things are more integrated than ever. People are more
Yeah.
aware of how websites work and how the internet works. Users are more educated about the internet and content than ever before. So we understand stuff like UX and CRO and how this all integrates and how much that matters to that conversion rate. Like you said, combining CRO and SEO should probably go without saying at this point. It's 2025. We should be just doing this by default. But I think you're spot on that so many of it, we're either set in our ways and been doing it long enough that we're kind of guilty of just like, yeah, I'll just do my old SEO thing. Or you come in with that silo mentality and you don't integrate all of those things in at once, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's and it's hard too because I think that, CRO and UX and like SEO especially, like those are three things that often get kind of put into a like a trifecta of a tri diagram, whatever you call it. But like those specialties are so nuanced and niche that like, yeah, I can probably work my way through a conversation of knowing the basics of CRO and UX and like we offer tips and tricks to our clients and like do the fundamentals. But like if you go down the rabbit hole, like both of those things go so deep. And like those who are actual experts and specialists, like it's a whole different ball game. And so, I mean, there's different tools, different analytics, different like, A/B testing, like everything that goes under the
You said
sun.
the
And it's
psychology
just like
behind it as well, right?
yeah. Yeah, so and that's kind of where I'm like, "Oh, wow," like, that's a whole decade of experience that I just, like, don't have when it comes to working alongside someone next to me, so, but yeah, like, those are the little things that move the needle and kinda squeeze that last little percentage points out and, like, drive that extra revenue. So I think that, like, from that point of view, it's a huge godsend when you know how to do that or you at least have someone in your back pocket who can tap into that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to have those conversations and get other people involved, even if it's, I've had this experience before where they have an external UX agency that's also the developers or whatever of the client site. Like, have that conversation with them then. Don't just start changing stuff on the main nav without having that conversation. Don't just start chucking CTAs and internal links everywhere without having that conversation. Because, as you said, they probably have way more experience in this stuff than you, and we can all benefit and make the
Yeah.
client benefit from that. And at the end of the day, and especially when you work in agency side, that's the goal at the end of the day, to make those clients happier, make more money, build that relationship. And if we can all do that together, and this is very like optimistic and easier said than done, obviously, but in theory, that's the dream, right? That's the goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, and just like, just through like I think being in that world and being in the agency world, like I'm gonna pick up on things here and there, whether it's from client, A, B, and C over here, and that's gonna be applied to maybe a client that's 5 years out and doesn't know that we're about to work together. But like I'm gonna be like, oh, I remember when I did this one thing with this one client, and like this is pretty similar. We should probably test that out. And so you just kind of like, law of large numbers, you deal with a bunch of random situations, like you kind of start to know what to do and what not to do through experience.
100%. Absolutely. I think that pretty much wraps us up for creating content that converts. I think it's, again, probably a conversation we continue having for another few hours because there are
Yeah.
so many different directions we could pluck at. But I know our time is limited. We can't go on. I don't think we can quite do like a Joe Rogan style 3 4 hour podcast at this point. We'll be pushing our luck a little bit. But if the listeners and viewers do want to follow you, Stephen, do want to check out Trio SEO and what you guys are up to, where are the best places to find you?
Yeah, you can find us at trioseo.com, TRIO SEO. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. You can just Google my name, Stephen Schneider, in combination with Trio SEO. I was kind of like to joke that if you can't find us, then we're doing something wrong as an SEO agency. So,
That's the real like baller SEO move, is like, just Google me, you'll find me. If you're like, I know my friend Miriam's SEO, they always say, just Google Miriam SEO and I'm there. I'm like, now that is a baller move right there. If you could just use first name SEO, sorry to the Jack and the Stevens of the world. We've got
oh yeah,
unoriginal first names. I don't think Steven SEO or Jack SEO will give us much work, but
and if they
just
are, the
Google me. It's
SEO is
still
already
pretty
bought
baller
them.
move.
It's fine. Yeah,
Exactly,
exactly.
exactly. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Stephen. It's been a real pleasure having a chat and digging into all the intricacies of content that converts.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. This is a great conversation.
And that wraps up this week's episode of the Search with Canada podcast. Thank you so much for watching or listening, wherever you are watching or listening. You can also watch on Spotify now. If you didn't already know, we do upload the video episodes there, so you can go and check us out in video form, either on YouTube or on Spotify. You can also leave comments on Spotify in the same way that you can on YouTube. So like I said at the start of the show, if you have any questions, if there are any topics, any guests you want to see on the show in future, please do let me know in the comments down below. Like I said, thank you for watching and listening. I will be back next week with the one and only Itamar Balawa. We're going to be talking all about the future of search, Google's future, and how that ties into the growth of LLMs and AI that we've seen over the last couple of years or so. Itamar is an absolute genius and a brilliant guy to talk about this kind of thing. He has a really great idea and a finger on the pulse of a lot of the trends that are happening right now. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I recorded that a couple of weeks ago, and you can tune in for that next week. Please do, like I said at the start of the show, subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow us on Spotify. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube. And like I said, stay tuned for that week's episode next week with Itamar Blauer. So yeah, huge thank you, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much.